Hi, everybody. I'm coming to you again from my kitchen table. I appreciate you understanding. I need to sort of move things around just a little bit here while I'm taking care of some educational needs for my child. And I'm hoping to have some things sorted out pretty quickly and not be working on a week-to-week basis in the not too distant future. But in the meantime, again, appreciate the patience. I'm going to talk about law and ethics today and some of the things I'd like you to consider as you head out on these first packages. But before I do that, I wanted to go over just a couple of quick reminders about the schedule and clarifications in case you have any questions on this. Group 2, you are going to come face-to-face to class on Monday, which will enable us to talk about your story pitches in person. So Monday, October 19th, will be face-to-face for Group 2. Group 1, you've already been through your story pitches. You are free to go out and begin working on those stories right now. You really want to get those stories shot, entirely done by Wednesday, the 28th of October, so that you have 48 hours to write those scripts, and then an opportunity to run them by me if you want some general suggestions and feedback between the 28th and Friday the 30th, so that you can get those edited over the weekend and turned in on time for your due date on Monday, November 2nd. Folks who are in Group 2, if you are pitching on Monday, you're going to try to be done shooting your story at the latest by Monday, November 2nd, which will again give you 48 hours to work on your scripts. And that's really the process here. You go shoot your story, you come back, you're looking at the video, you're considering the video, you're logging that video, and then you're writing the script. Don't begin writing the script before you head out. You can organize the script. You can think about what it is that you want to say. You can think about the story shape that you might want to follow that story. You don't want to wait to begin the actual writing process until you've got, a fair bit of your story in-house so that you can begin looking at the video, etc. So next week, on Wednesday, the 21st, Group 1, I want you to come in face-to-face so we could talk about the arc of the interview. If you are heading out on your interviews before Wednesday, which is fine, just consider two things. If you're going to pursue a diamond shape of a story, you want to make sure to ask your subjects two different types of questions. You want to establish why we're listening to that person in the first place. So why are you interviewing somebody about parenting? Don't ask them about the parenting issue, like the return to school just yet. Ask them about their children and what they think about their kids. How many kids do they have? How much do they love their kids? How much are their kids driving them crazy being at home? Think about, why am I interviewing this person to begin with in the story, so that you can ask a couple of questions about that frame of reference, so that when they speak to that and you introduce them as a character in your story, you're introducing them as a human being first, and then you'll get to the issue at hand at the end of the story. So if you ask 2 or 3 questions about them and their kids at the beginning, then you'd ask about the return to school, how they feel about it, why it feels controversial to them, why they're happy about it, etc. at the end. So that would be my one piece of advice as you head out to shoot those personal interviews. That'll give you a little bit more to work with if you are pursuing a diamond-shaped story as opposed to an hourglass story. So, and we'll talk more about that next Wednesday. So do come face-to-face on Wednesday, and then Friday the 23rd on the art and craft of natural sound. Everybody can come in remotely next Friday, and but we will be synchronous. So we'll do the class real time, but we will all be coming in remotely. So that way you guys can go ahead and schedule your week for next week, and then we'll see about things after that. So those are the logistics. I'll make sure to post an update on that on Blackboard so that everybody is pretty clear about who comes in on which days next week for pre-planning purposes. Say that 3 times fast. So Let's talk a little bit about law and ethics today, and I want to show you some examples and talk about what some of the biggest things I'd like you to be thinking about as you head into the field on these first full packages of the semester. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you, and we're going to do a little bit of a PowerPoint, and then I'm going to show you several examples, and we're going to bounce in and out of that. So let's go ahead and start with that PowerPoint. So here we go. All right, so there is a quote that I love very much. If you're in my producing class, you may have heard this as well. But I really like this quote a lot. Reading about ethics is about as likely to improve one's behavior as reading about sports is to make one into an athlete. I think it's an important thing because really it's about muscle memory. Until you get out there and practice these things and run into issues and challenges real time, sometimes it's hard to kind of put these concepts into practice in our reporting. So we go out there and we start covering stories, and then we learn why we're running into trouble, and then we learn to fix it. One of the best ways to identify problems in advance is to know what some of the biggest issues are. And then if you ever have a question about what to do, then you come to me, send me an email, tell me you're running into a challenge, and then talk to your news manager about that before you put anything into writing in a script, etc. Or you shoot something that you think maybe you shouldn't be shooting, then we'll talk about it. So let's talk about some of the major things that really get reporters and producers, but mostly we're in a reporting class. So let's talk about things that get us into the most trouble. First of all, we have the issues of libel or defamation. And so these are situations where we're saying something or we're allowing something to be said within our stories, and we're not double checking those facts or being careful about them before we put them in there, and especially that's true when it's a point of view. So when you're dealing with libel, we're dealing with damage to somebody's character or defamation of someone, a person, a group, an institution, their reputation or character by saying something that is not true with malice or negligence, or what we call reckless disregard for the truth, right? So the biggest way to fix this problem is to fact check it and to be accurate. So if we're dealing with libel, which tends to be something written, by the way, TV scripts count as libel. So if you're reading off a script for a TV story, it can often mean that you have libeled someone. So they're kind of equal opportunity crimes in our field. The more public a person is, the harder it is to win a libel suit. Private citizens, people get more protections. People in public get fewer protections. But if you've fact-checked something, then and you know for sure the information that you're providing is correct, then you're going to be safe pretty much most of the time. And if you can demonstrate that you tried to fact-check it, you'll also be reasonably safe. It's when you don't fact-check yourself that you get into the biggest trouble. Also, with attribution. So if something is coming out of your mouth that is a point of view or a perspective about someone or something, then provide attribution. That often will help. So police say, witnesses we talked to told us, right? So if you source the information in your story and you provide attribution first and the information second, that also will fix things a lot of the time. False light is something different. This is a big problem when people say that you defamed them or libeled them by using their likeness in a story that had nothing to do with them, or using it in an incautious or uncareful way. I'm going to show you some examples of this in just a moment. This is one of the biggest points of trouble that young reporters get into. You're looking for some cover video, you have a video poor story, and so you just do some general B-roll out on the horseshoe, and then you throw it into a story. about something, and then that's going to get you into a lot of hot water. And in fact, doing that is one of the biggest problems that working industry people get into too. They grab some cover B-roll, throw it in a story on a topic, and the person is identifiable in that video, and so they don't like it and they take you to court. Another problem is the issue of privacy. Where and when can we go and gather material, and where and when should we go and gather material, including some private facts? So where and when can we go gather? A lot of times you are 100% within your rights to go shoot anything that you want, as long as it is in a public venue. And by public, we mean, you know, if you're on a sidewalk, you can shoot anything that you want. If you are downtown on a street, you can shoot video of anything that you want. You can shoot video of any police encounter with another human, as long as you are not interrupting the officer's ability to do their work. If it is taking place out on the State House grounds, you are free to go and shoot video of that, because anybody can walk onto the State House grounds. You cannot, however, walk into a shopping mall and shoot video there. Because that's actually private property. Even though the general public can go in there, you can't go there without permission. If you're not sure whether or not you can shoot somewhere, or you're concerned about whether or not you can shoot something, just shoot me an email or ask for an open session training on something, or some Q&A, and we can talk about that. Also, when it comes to elementary schools or middle schools, or any schools for that matter, technically, you can shoot from the sidewalk to the school, right? But you cannot shoot kids video of the kids going in, like on the playground or something like that, because those students do have an expectation of privacy when they go to school, which is required by law. So they're required to go to school, therefore they have an expectation of privacy while they are there. Where and when should we include private facts? You know, in the case between Hulk Hogan and Gawker, that was a big issue of when for example, this was a sexually explicit tape. When is it appropriate to say, hey, this person is a public figure, and therefore what we're finding in the area of sexually explicit material is fair game? You can very much often lose that lawsuit. Whereas if you are a candidate for president, and like Gary Hart was many decades ago, and you say, go try and find out an instance where I have been unfaithful to my wife, and then the media go find out that you have been unfaithful to your wife, then that's fair game, because you challenged them to go find an instance where your credibility or your reliability is in question, and then we find an example where in fact it's not, then it's kind of a you asked for it situation. And so it depends on the setting, it depends on whether you're a public figure, it depends on the conditions of every case, and it also depends on your due diligence as a reporter. So you should go look up the Hulk Hogan Gawker case or the Gary Hart case to learn a little bit more about both of those, because they both involved lawsuits against the media, and one in case where they won and one where they didn't. So by the way, this Gary Hart case, this was the beginning of presidential politics, where a president's personal sexual behavior and activity became fair game for the media. Before then, it was something the media just didn't tend to cover. Copyright. This is a very big issue, especially for young reporters. Be sure that the information belongs to you. If not, you need to cite where you got it from, and you need to get permission to use it. So for example, if you read something in the state newspaper and you don't go double check that for yourself and put your own eyeballs on that information, then you have to credit the state newspaper or the New York Times or CNN or WLTX or wherever you got that information from. You cannot put that information into your story unless you provide attribution for the source of that information. What if that journalistic organization got it wrong? What if they didn't double check it themselves and just put it into their story? Then it becomes a game of telephone tag, right? So you really can't just use information because you read it somewhere. Facts are not by definition in the public venue if you've learned them through a source that did reporting to gather those facts. So we want to always attribute information in our stories to somebody, the closest organization to those facts. So if a New York Times cites a story and they have an interview in the New York Times, you could talk about, you know, this source in a New York Times article told the New York Times X, Y, and Z, right? You cannot just take facts off of a Twitter feed necessarily and attribute them to yourself. You need to say, according to this person's Twitter page. You can't just pull video off of someone's Facebook feed or Twitter feed and put it into a story. You have to actually reach out to that person, get permission from that person, and give me that information in writing from that person that you have permission to use it. News organizations always have to go and get permission, including from social media feeds. Just because you see it on a social media feed doesn't mean it's fair game. So these are some of the big issues that students run into. I want to give you an example of defamation from a student story. And so I'm going to pop out of this for a moment, and I'm going to jump into this defamation example. So this was a student who some years ago covered the Todd Kohlhepp story. You may remember Todd Kohlhepp. He is the guy who authorities arrested as being a possible serial killer. So this is the student's first script review on this BOSOT that she did, right? So Spartanburg County serial killer. Okay, problem number one, you have given the story a slug that convicts that person before they've been convicted. So much better to change the story to the person's name or something else. So Spartanburg County murder case or Todd Kohlhepp case or something like that. But when you put serial killer in there and this person hasn't even been officially charged or called by police or authorities to be a serial killer, then this is a perfect example of something that would be asked for in a court of law to document your lack of care in this case. So you may have recently heard about Woodruff, South Carolina, or the name Todd Kohlhepp. According to authorities in Spartanburg, South Carolina, Kohlhepp is responsible for kidnapping of a missing Anderson County woman and the murders of 7 people. So you've provided attribution there, right, of what they are saying, but then we take video, and here's what it says. Over the past couple of weeks, the small rural town in South Carolina has had the shock of a lifetime. One of their very own residents and real estate agents is now known nationally as a small town serial killer. Well, first of all, he has not been convicted, and so this could land us in very serious legal jeopardy if he was found innocent or not guilty by a court of law. After Kohlhepp's arrest, the cold case has been left open since 2003, has now been solved. Says who? Right? So you got to put that into the words of the people. So Todd Kohlhepp update. This is the revised script. First of all, it works much better with the video that we have. So let's see how this looks. South Carolina man suspected of being a serial killer will stay in jail after a judge denied bond in 2 recent hearings. Authorities believe Todd Kohlhepp is responsible for the kidnapping of a missing Anderson County woman and the murders of 7 people. 3 bodies were found down this rural road in the town of Woodruff. Okay, so in this case, a much better writing to video. The trailer where Anderson woman was found chained alive is now gone, and the 100-acre property, while still a crime scene, authorities are still there to keep the scene secure. Kohlhepp is charged with kidnapping and murder for the bodies found on the ranch. He's also been officially charged with killing 4 people at a motorcycle shop in 2003. The district attorney is confident that he is responsible for the cold case. We are putting those words into the mouths of the person who said it and providing attribution, right? So this is a way that you can work around defamation. You provide clarity on where you're getting in the information. You're very careful with that data, and you provide that attribution in your story. Okay, so another thing that I mentioned was using cover video to create false light. I want to show 2 packages that are examples of false light, both before and after, and these are very simple fixes. And so I want to see if you can identify the issue in the first one and then also see what the fixes look like. So let's talk about this 5 points bar enforcement. Okay, so here is the wrong one. Let's take this ball.
Forget about the weekend. Monday is one of the biggest nights for the folks at Pitfalls. With a whole lot of specials on tap, drinkers line up, often around the block to get in, and many are young. It's manager Butch Sumter's job to watch the door. He's upset about a recent increase in police presence in and around 5 Points.
They just come walking in, they run off our business, and we're left here just standing here. I mean, we're basically looking at each other because 95% of our crowd leaves. So it sucks. It really does suck.
Located just down the street from USC, 5 Points is a popular drinking spot, especially for college students. This year, there's been an increase in the number of DUI cases and the amount of underage drinking. According to the district attorney, 43 underage drinkers wound up with...
Okay, so I'm just going to stop it there. So we're talking about underage drinking. We're talking about Pavlov's allowing underage drinking. So tell me, is she an underage drinker? And did Pavlov's let in an underage drinker in this instance? So you have just said that both of those things are true because of the way you shot selected this particular story, right? So you would need to be much more careful about what it is that you're doing here if you want to fix the story. So let's go in and see what the simple fix might be and see whether or not this is any better.
In the number of DUI cases and the amount of underage drinking. According to the district attorney, 43 underage drinkers wound up in the hospital.
I don't think that's any better, so that was the fix. I think you need to be showing nothing but drinks and nothing that's identifiable to that bar. I think that that's going to be a problem that is going to get you sued, okay? So you need to be mindful of that. Let's take a look at another example of where we're telling a story and where the ways in which you integrate the information and the shot selection are going to get you in trouble.
For Parker Johnson, life at USC is amazing. He loves his part-time job as a cashier for Carolina Dining and takes pride in his customer service.
You're still looking good in your load jacket.
When he's not behind the register, he's loving life on campus. And he's everywhere.
I just like to spread out a lot of cool things like sporting events, and it's amazing.
Other students like him are too. You may not be able to find them.
Okay, so I'm going to stop for a second. Other students like him are too, right? Spreading out across campus. So the problem here is you're doing a story about people with intellectual challenges, which is a great story, and there's nothing wrong with having an intellectual challenge. But if you're talking about people like him, and you're showing these 2 students, or these 2 people for that matter, we don't even know that they're students, but if you're going to show these 2 people and you're going to talk about people like him and go on to discuss intellectual challenges, that suggests that these 2 people perhaps got into the University of South Carolina because of that, not in light of their SAT scores or other reasons why they might also be a student at the University of South Carolina. So that is a problem of shooting generic video and then using it in the wrong way in a story. So a simple fix would include, let's pick it up from here. We take it full.
Register, he's loving life on campus, and he's everywhere.
I just like to spread out a lot of cool things like sporting events, and it's amazing.
Other students like him are too. You may not be able to find them.
So simple. Show feet. Show something that is not identifiable, right? Because in order to do that, if you just make something much simpler and unidentifiable, you get rid of the false light issue, which is a big problem for early journalists. So a couple of other quick things. It's not just about doing what's legally correct, but it's also doing what's ethically correct. Just to run a couple of quick things by you. First of all, no staged shots. So we don't put up crime tape at the Todd Colehep crime scene just to make it look newsier, like this ABC News crew did. That's a big bad no-no. You've got to build public trust and accountability. People need to know that what you're doing is the right thing. It affects everything we do, the topics we cover, the places we go, the people we pursue as sources. Who we are affects the decisions that we make, and what we put on the air really matters. And people trust us. They want to trust us. And when we screw up, it makes it harder for us to do our jobs, even very simple things. So I'd like you to think about this in terms especially of diversity and diversity of storytelling. By crafting a diverse news product, you are being an ethical journalist. And that means expanding the range of people that you include in your stories. Think about all of the stories that are outside of your personal existence as a person who is able to afford to come to college, to be here on a college campus, what that means to have those privileges, or what that means to have worked your fingers to the bone, or your family's fingers to the bone in order to be here, and think about how to engage a larger community all around us who are not as privileged as we are to be on a college campus. This is true of journalists in general. You want to make sure that you are representing the broad spectrum of experience in your larger community, and we are all accountable for that. Minorities, and I put that in quotations because we hear that a lot, minorities, right? So people of color, LGBTQ reporters, those who are from lower socioeconomic status backgrounds, those who have intellectual challenges or physical challenges that they have to overcome to be in a newsroom. It's not their job to be responsible for diversity and inclusion. And in fact, it gets to be a very tiresome burden for African American reporters to be the ones who are always the ones responsible for pitching diverse story ideas. That's what I mean by we are all accountable. So not only do we sometimes get better reporting because we have a diverse workforce, and those people are going to new ideas and different ideas to bear in our news environments, but it's an opportunity from us to learn from those individuals and try to improve our own reporting and storytelling, especially how to come up with diverse story ideas by expanding our own frame of reference. So I encourage you to think about that as you come up with story ideas for this semester. Also, it does impact significantly our ethical practice is about accuracy and the facts that we include. There is no doubt that sexual trauma, that sexual assault on college campus is a real thing. No doubt it's a real thing. 1 in 4 women on campus, and a smaller proportion of men as well, report being sexually assaulted on a college campus. So it is real. However, this reporting was not real. this reporting on a rape on campus used the point of view and perspective of somebody, and the reporter did not double check their facts. And so we have a national story about rape on campus, and it did a huge disservice to both this particular campus involved at UVA, University of Virginia, and Rolling Stone. I mean, it was a debacle, this coverage, and the reporter was heartfelt, but did not check her facts and used a compilation of facts and believed a source and never went to double check the facts. And it ended up being a significant lawsuit that UVA won. And so this is a pretty serious deal. It also had significant ramifications for the people who worked there on campus. So you need to pay attention. And it really belittles the issue of rape and sexual assault on campus when you say, oh, that was just fake news. In fact, it was a case of fake news in some respects because the facts weren't double checked. And so it really hurt the veracity of the story and the issue on college campuses across America. Yeah, you're doing a story on Trayvon Martin and you use the first mugshot that you get. So you use a police, a social media picture on the left, and you use a driver's license picture on the right. That's not good reporting. It's not fair at all. Look how different these things are. Okay, so we have a mugshot on the right and a elementary school photo on the left. These tell a very different story. They are both actual real photos, but they portray something very different. And as a reporter, it's your responsibility to speak up when you see something that you feel is unfair to the people that your station or your news organization is covering. Also, what words we use. Do we call people migrants or refugees? Do we call them illegal aliens? That's an old term that we've seen come back into the news recently. Al Jazeera no longer uses the term migrant because it's earned a negative connotation. Refugees are people who are fleeing death and disorder. Migrants are people who tend to move because of financial realities and other sorts of things. But even a simple word is going to make a difference. It is a question of truth or consequences of what is real and what is reliable. I'm not going to do these now because I think I've talked long enough. But I encourage you to go to the PowerPoint that I have up on Blackboard for you and take a look at some of these deep fake versus fun fake news stories and how easy it is to doctor stories and make them seem like they're real, and in fact make them seem so real that they make it on to local media by accident. This is actually a job, by the way. You can become a social media data expert if you love social media and you're really good at looking at metadata and understanding how to scope out whether a story is real or not real, a piece of social media video is real or not real. There are jobs about that one thing, full-time jobs, good paying jobs for organizations around America. So I do recommend that you check out some of these links that I have provided you in this particular PowerPoint when you get a chance. So back to you on campus now. I'm sorry, on camera now. If you have any questions about this lecture or about what it means to be an ethical journalist, or especially if you have a question about a legal issue in a story that you have, please make sure that you reach out to me. And remember, you have to get permission before you use any video that you did not shoot. You have to get permission to include that in advance in your story. You can't just throw it in there and say, oh, I thought that was okay. You have to ask me, is it okay to use 10 or 15 seconds of video from another source? And then you need to make sure that you do a courtesy super in the top left-hand side so that it's clear where that information came from in your story. So make sure if you're thinking about doing that, that you reach out to me in advance. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing Group 2 on Monday in class, face-to-face. Group 1 will be out in the field doing their field work on their first packages. Hey, you guys, these deadlines, they come up really fast, so do not sit on your hands. Do not procrastinate. Do not wait. Call many people, get the ball rolling, and don't wait too long. If you run into trouble, reach out to me so that we can maybe shift story ideas before you run into trouble. Okay? I look forward to hearing from you guys soon and seeing you in the classroom. All right.